Treyarch was always the developer that made zombies. The game mode was a staple in all of their games since World at War. Everything was fine except for one thing, that year-long gap when nothing happened with zombies. That drought was the bane of every zombie player's and content creator's experience. Fans would go off and either play the new Call of Duty game or some other game. YouTubers would start making videos on other games. However, there were a few hardcore fans and creators that would stick through the old game's year-long drought. It was a low point in the zombies cycle, and Activision actually did something that would try and fix that problem. The first attempt to fix that problem was when Infinity Ward put the game mode Extinction into Call of Duty Ghost. You would think people would welcome this game mode with open arms.
Except no one liked it at all.
That's a bit of an overstatement, but it was far less popular than zombies. It just wasn't the same for a lot of people. But next year in 2014, Sledgehammer released their first Call of Duty game, Advanced Warfare. And with its first DLC was the beginning of a new era in COD Zombies. Outbreak was the first zombies map that wasn't made by Treyarch. It's really impossible to understate how groundbreaking that was for the time. Fans have been begging for more zombies content for years. That gap between Treyarch games was a thorn in the community's side for years. So you would think that the zombies community would jump on this new game mode in an instant. But something strange happened. They didn't. Exo Zombies was significantly less popular than Treyarch's mode. That could have just been a fluke, but as you'll see as we go on, a pattern is about to emerge. A pattern where all of the game modes that aren't made by Treyarch are significantly less popular. After the release of Black Ops 3 in 2015, Infinity Ward released their first Zombies mode in Infinite Warfare. Zombies in Spaceland was popular for a time, but as time went on, the game mode became the punching bag of the community. Lee Ross, the commander-in-chief for Infinite Warfare Zombies, was harassed daily on Twitter for his association with the game. The game rebounded slightly with the release of its final DLC, but it was overall still in Treyarch's shadow. The year after that, Call of Duty World War II was released, and a similar pattern emerged. The game was relatively popular at launch, but the game became less and less popular as time went on. So let's recap here. Years ago, fans were clamoring for more zombies content, but now that we have it, fans don't want it. There are even fans that don't want the next COD game to have zombies in it. And with the confirmation that Modern Warfare won't have zombies, it seems like these fans are going to get what they want. So what's going on here? Why was Treyarch Zombies the only mode that fans played? Did the fans not know what they wanted? Were the other modes simply not good? Or are there some other factors at play here? That's the question I'm going to try and answer in this video. So let's take a look at the games and see what we find. One of the biggest hurdles these zombie game modes have is getting COD fans to want to buy the games themselves. There were 3 Zombies game modes put out by non-Treyarch developers: Exo Zombies, Infinite Warfare Zombies, and World War II Zombies. We'll throw Extinction in here for good measure. What all 4 of these games have in common is that the COD community as a whole had either mixed or largely negative opinions on all of these games. Ghosts and Infinite Warfare were hated by a majority of the community and had a lot of people really worried about Infinity Ward's potential as a studio. Thankfully, with the release of Modern Warfare in 2019, it seems like things are going to turn around for them. But I'm not holding my breath. World War II is in a similar boat as Advanced Warfare. Both games were an attempt to make the larger community happy. People were unhappy with the COD series because it never seemed to do anything different, so Sledgehammer put out Advanced Warfare. After that, people were unhappy with the futuristic EXO loot box casino that the series went in after Advanced Warfare, so Sledgehammer put out World War II to undo everything they did with Advanced Warfare. Advanced Warfare was loved by some people, but the futuristic blazer thing the game went with was a hard sell for some people. Things only got worse as the game went on, when the priority went to adding supply drop weapons rather than balancing the game. It's also worth noting with Advanced Warfare that the game didn't launch with zombies. Exo Zombies was only added after the DLC cycle started. Originally, the game launched with Survival for Modern Warfare 3 as its third mode. We'll talk more about that and what impact it had on the game later on in the video. World War II was also loved by some people, but the game was widely criticized at launch. It was only when the heads of the studio left and or were fired when the game started to improve, but for many it was too little too late. Now compare this mixed to negative reception to the Treyarch games. World at War, and especially Black Ops and Black Ops 2, are considered some of the greatest COD games of all time. Even Black Ops 3 is beloved by many fans, and often considered the best of the futuristic phase. Why does any of this matter? Because it's going to be very difficult to get people to play your Zombies mode and buy the DLC if you can't even convince them to buy the game itself. Even if the Zombies mode is good, the rest of the game does matter. Most fans look for more in their COD game than just a good Zombies mode. You can't discount the multiplayer guys who play zombies casually. Whether you like it or not, the casual Zombies audience has a silent majority when looking at the overall COD community. The rest of the game has to be good for people to buy in. Another huge factor that goes hand in hand with the games themselves maybe not being the highest of quality is the entry price into Zombies. This is one of the biggest problems with Zombies in my opinion. The game itself is $60, which isn't a whole lot of money in the grand scheme of things, but certainly isn't something to take lightly. And for some people that is a lot of money. And that $60 gets you 1 Zombies map, 2 if you're lucky. Exo Zombies has it worse because you get no Zombies map for that $60.
Yeah, let me ask you a question. Are you insane?
Again, let's compare this to Treyarch Zombies. World at War has 1 map. On the surface, that doesn't sound so great, but it was the first COD Zombies game, so that's fine. No one was expecting any maps. Black Ops had 2 maps, Kino der Toten, and 5. 3 if you count Dead Ops Arcade, which I do. Black Ops 2 has Transit, and it's 3 Green Run maps, Town, Farm, and Bus Depot, as well as Nuketown Zombies as a cheap DLC. It also had game modes like Grief to shake things up. Black Ops 3 only had 1 map, Shadows of Evil on disc, but it also had Dead Ops Arcade 2, as well as the Giant for only an extra $5. Black Ops 4 has 3 fully fleshed out maps on disc, as well as Classified, Rush, and now Gauntlets, and more customization options than anyone knows what to do with. When given the choice of how you're going to spend your $60, which are you going to pick? The one with 1 map, or the one with several maps, as well as more features? It's a simple choice. It's undeniable that the Treyarch modes offer more value for your dollar. On top of that, the Treyarch games, like I said before, have been more popular games in the community as a whole. So not only do the Treyarch games have better value for zombies specifically, they arguably have better value for the multiplayer and the campaign. Keep in mind that we've only been talking about what comes on the disc. There's also a DLC season, which is where Zombies really starts to take off. If you buy all the DLC maps for a given game, which in all fairness is I think a majority of the hardcore Zombies community, you're spending another $60. As I said before, $60 isn't something that most people just throw around at the drop of the hat, but that's another $60 on top of the $60 you already spent. In other words, in order to get the full Zombies experience, you need to spend at least $120. That doesn't include any special pre-order editions of the game, loot boxes, and all the other BS developers insist on putting in their games now. $120 is a lot for one game. There are people that don't even spend that much throughout an entire year on games. And because Zombies was a yearly thing, because Call of Duty was a yearly thing, you'd be shilling out $120 every single year in order to keep up. That's just too much for the average player. So imagine you're a normal gamer. You like Zombies, but you also like a whole bunch of other games. You're looking for a new game to play, your options are spending $120 on a new COD Zombies game that may or may not be good, or you can get a different game. Perhaps you can get the new Resident Evil 2 remake. Can I interest you in the Doom reboot? Or maybe spend money on some older games that are on sale. The game just isn't worth that much money for most people. One of the biggest differences between Treyarch Zombies and the Zombies modes made by other developers is the fans' lack of attachment towards the modes made by the other developers. Fans have not been attached to the story, characters, or gameplay from the Zombies mode made by Infinity Ward or Sledgehammer, but they have been attached to the story and gameplay from Treyarch games. One of the most important factors that determines whether someone will buy a product is whether they have an emotional attachment to said product. In this case, the product is the Zombies mode or the video game as a whole. It's a common understanding in marketing that people are more willing to buy a product when customers have an emotional attachment to the product or brand. Some even go as far to say that the emotional attachment is more important than what the product itself is. That begs the question, why was Treyarch Zombies able to make a connection? The two biggest differences between Treyarch Zombies and the other developers is that Treyarch had time where they were the only ones making zombies, and the other developers are constantly rebooting the story and setting. We'll start with the first one. Treyarch was the first developer to add a zombies mode into their Call of Duty game. And they had 3 games in a row where they were the only developer making zombies. And these 3 games, as we talked about before, are 3 of the most popular Call of Duty games of all time. That gave fans 6 years in total to get attached to Treyarch Zombies before any competition was added. After those 6 years, Sledgehammer created Exo-Zombies, and Treyarch finally had competition within the Zombies game mode. But Sledgehammer had to go up against 6 years of time, experience, and passion from fans. Moving forward, Infinite Warfare Zombies had to go up against now 8 years of that same time, experience, and passion. There was almost no chance that something brand new can compete with that kind of legacy. Sledgehammer's second attempt went up against 9 years of the same thing, and the result was very similar. Moving on to the second point, the other developers keep rebooting their story game after game. The Aether story has been going on for over a decade now, giving fans more than enough time to grow attached to the characters of the story. The story and setting for every non-Treyarch Zombies mode has been rebooted after its initial run. None have survived more than 1 year. The only possible exception is when Infinity Ward reintroduced Extinction into the final DLC of Infinite Warfare Zombies. I'm not going to count that because Zombies and Extinction function entirely differently as game modes, and because this happened at the very last second. While this did garner interest, it was too late for the game mode and most fans. It also failed to answer many of the remaining questions left at the end of Extinction. Extinction fans didn't jump on the Infinite Warfare train like Treyarch Zombies fans jump on the hype train for every new game. Though it should be said, the reason it may have garnered interest is because fans of Extinction saw something they remembered, saw something they had an attachment to, and it piqued their interest, because they had an emotional attachment to something that was now coming back. Extinction was by no means a popular mode as we talked about at the beginning of the video. However, it did help garner interest for Infinite Warfare's final DLC. So it's not entirely possible that an unpopular game mode can establish a fan base and grow it. But you can't grow a fan base if you throw everything away after the first year and completely restart. Your game mode is not going to rival Treyarch Zombies right out of the gate. The reason Treyarch is so popular is because they took time to build things up. Let's compare it to movies, Marvel versus DC Comics. The reason the Marvel movies are so popular, partially because they're generally good movies, but because they've been building things up over the past decade. When DC tried to make movies, they jumped in head first and tried to compete with Marvel on that same level. And it didn't work. The DC Cinematic Universe has been all but forgotten, while Marvel's Endgame is about to become the highest grossing movie of all time. These other developers are taking the DC route, while Treyarch took the Marvel route. And just like the movies, it's paid out to the one who's built things up over time. All things considered, I can't blame the developers entirely on this one. It would have been almost impossible for Sledgehammer to follow up their sci-fi exo-zombies in a gritty World War II game, and Infinite Warfare Zombies mode was technically their first Zombies mode. The only thing they could have done differently was tie in the mode with Extinction earlier, but that likely wouldn't have saved them from all the other problems the game already had. First impressions are incredibly important. The on-disc map is going to be your first experience from the new game mode, but the start of the DLC season is still going to be affecting your first impressions of this new game. Players need to see and play at least a couple of different maps before their first impressions are cemented, and those are even subject to change on a map-to-map basis. Most on-disc maps for these games are not bad. More often than not, the first map is the best map in the season. But the DLC 1 map for each of these games has always been a significant step down from the first map. Don't believe me? Let's take a look. Advanced Warfare technically doesn't fall into this category because the zombie season started with DLC 1, but when I say the DLC 1 hurdle, I more or less mean the second map in a game's season. Advanced Warfare's first map was Outbreak. While it's not a fan favorite or even the best in the game, it was liked well enough at the time. The next map, on the other hand, is almost universally hated. The Wonder Weapon is one of the worst in all of Zombies history, and the survivors throughout the map are maybe the worst thing to ever exist in Zombies ever? Infinite Warfare Zombies started with Zombies in Spaceland, and it was reasonably popular at launch, at least considering what most people like myself were expecting. But it declined pretty fast. Raven to Redwoods was the first DLC for Infinite Warfare, and it wasn't as good as Spaceland. It wasn't the worst map in Infinite Warfare. That title would likely go to Shaolin Shuffle. The biggest problem was that Rave didn't improve upon Spaceland. Of all the games, Infinite Warfare had the best shot of avoiding the DLC 1 hurdle. World War II, on the other hand, tripped and fell on their faces on DLC 1. The Final Reich was popular at launch for the most part. People loved the setting, the gore in the game mode was returned to the classic style of zombies we saw in World at War, and having a casual and hardcore Easter egg was groundbreaking at the time. We still don't have that feature in Treyarch Zombies. And even the story started out pretty strong. But then The Darkest Shore came out, and good God was that ever a mistake. The Easter egg in the boss fight I remember being very unpopular. The map is small and claustrophobic, and they brought back the fucking fog! And they somehow made it worse than ever before. Why do Zombies devs keep bringing fog back into their maps? We don't need this. Nobody wants this. Treyarch knows the importance of a good DLC 1. Oftentimes DLC 1 is the best map for the game's season. In Black Ops, the first DLC was Ascension, a fan favorite map that innovated the game mode in so many different ways. For Black Ops 3, Der Eisendrache was the first DLC, and that's a fan favorite map. Even a less popular DLC one like Die Rise was able to improve upon the base map. That's really what it comes down to at the end of the day. The first DLC needs to improve upon the on-disc map. That's also why I think Infinite Warfare's first DLC didn't succeed. It wasn't better than Spaceland, even though it wasn't terrible. And in all fairness, not every DLC 1 map from Treyarch has been good. I'm looking at you, Black Ops 4. Black Ops 4, not unlike the Gamemodes from other developers, lost a lot of players around the time of DLC 1. This isn't to say the other maps aren't important to a game's longevity. If a game has a fantastic launch and a great first DLC, but everything after is an undeniable pile of trash, then the game isn't going to do well long term. But you have to hook people in early. First impressions are the most important, and they can't be redone. What I'm trying to say is that DLC 1 is the most important map in a game's lifecycle. The on-disc map is what's going to grab people's interest and introduce them to the game mode. And the second map is what's going to ensure they stick around for the rest of the game's lifecycle. All of the games with a bad DLC 1 have been the least successful zombies game modes, while the games with a good DLC 1 have had the most success. All of those things made the game modes from other developers unpopular at first, but there's more to this story than just that. When Advanced Warfare came out and we got Outbreak, while we admitted it had its problems, we were very happy to see that there would no longer be those large content droughts. But as time went on, things slowly started to shift. As Advanced Warfare's life cycle went on, there was a sense of superiority around Treyarch zombies. And a lot of people at the time, and still now, wouldn't disagree with that. We all like Treyarch zombies more, but many of us were still having fun with Advanced Warfare's take on the game mode. But then Infinite Warfare came out, and things started to get toxic. Largely because the game was the opposite of what fans wanted to see in their next COD game as a whole. Well, that toxicity spread to zombies and started to grow. The toxicity peaked around the middle of Infinite Warfare's life cycle, in between Shaolin Shuffle and Attack of the Radioactive Thing, and Lee Ross took all of the heat. Certain members of the community developed an elitist mindset towards Treyarch games. These people believed that nothing from the other developers was worth playing. If it isn't from Treyarch, it's trash. I'm by no means the only one to talk about this happening. Other people have mentioned this long before me, but I find that it's often maybe just a little bit overstated. When I see people talk about elitism, it's almost as if the only reason these other game modes haven't done well is because of that sense of elitism. And as we talked about over the course of this video, that simply isn't the case. There are objective problems with these games. However, it does play a role in the overall story. This mentality can and will affect new and old players and prevent them from even giving the new game modes a shot, regardless of what they have to offer. The more often you hear something, the more likely you are to believe that it's true, even if it isn't true whatsoever. It's called the illusion of truth effect. I'll include a link to the Wikipedia page in the description if you want to read more about it. And that's where you come in. We can't do anything to fix the game itself. That's on the developers and Activision. But what we can do is go into the new game modes with an open mind. We can throw away that sense of elitism, we can become better than it, and we can give these new game modes a shot, because they might actually be good. But unfortunately, with Modern Warfare not having a zombies mode, it doesn't seem like we'll get that opportunity anytime soon. Now that we have all the information, here's the full picture. The games themselves are questionable, and without prior attachment to the story and game mode, and with the high entry price, the majority of us pass. Those who do buy in watch as the game struggles to get through the early DLC season. Not many make it to DLC 4, and because of this, the game mode is seen as a failure. As this happens more and more often, the community develops an allegiance to Treyarch and pushes aside all the other game modes on principle. And now we see the result with Modern Warfare. Infinity Ward says that it's because they want to make a consistent game, but if Activision wanted them to make a zombies game and believed that it would sell, there would be zombies in Modern Warfare. Will we ever get more zombies game modes by non-Treyarch developers? I'm not sure. The future of Call of Duty is shaky at best, and that means the future of zombies is shaky at best. This might have been our one shot to see other takes on the zombies game mode within Call of Duty, and unfortunately that chance has been squandered. But those are just my thoughts. What do you think? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you've enjoyed, like and subscribe if you want to see more. That's all for me today. I'll see you in the next one.